Have you ever walked out of a mall into a huge parking area and realized you'd forgotten where you parked your car? You ever gone mountain biking? What do you want to be when you grow up? What's the right tip? Have you called a plumber to your home lately? How superstitious are you? How much money would it take to make you spend a night in a cemetery? Would you display this as a trophy? Do you have a pet? Do you have a sweet tooth? Do you believe in the power of a curse? Have you had your hearing tested lately? Planning a trip soon? Can you remember the tallest man you've ever seen? Do you love to go a-wandering beneath a clear blue sky? Have you noticed what big stars real estate agents have become? Are you careful with your personal records? Does your computer ever seem to have a mind of its own? Have you ever visited a Chinatown section in a major city? Have you ever visited a flea market? Have you ever visited a truck stop? Did you ever have a job as a waiter? Have you noticed how many successful restaurants are theme-based these days? Have you ever had the desire to write your initials in wet cement?
You already know and love Will Rogers, our resident voice actor, my longtime friend, and host of the podcast and YouTube show Guide to the Unknown with his sister and my longtime cool as hell other buddy, Kristen Rogers-Anderson. Together, these wonder siblings explore urban legends, the paranormal, horror movies, haunted places, and creepy pop culture. You know, all the good stuff. So I wanted to invite them on to talk about an early inspiration for American Hysteria, a little 90s and early 2000s mystery show called Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. In this wonderfully cheesy program, several seemingly impossible stories were reenacted in each episode, and you had to guess which were true and which were recycled urban legends or made up entirely by the writing team. But on Beyond Belief, the term fact was used very loosely, usually credited offhandedly to one author's research conducted decades before. So who was this mysterious man who found apparently true tales of the paranormal, the miraculous, and the clearly beyond belief? I did my best to piece together his wild life story to see just who this arbiter of truth was during the mystery-obsessed pop cultural landscape of the late 1990s. And I bring the hilarious hosts of Guide to the Unknown along with me for the ride. I'm your host, Chelsey Weber-Smith, and this is American Hysteria. I am beyond excited to have our guests today on the show, Will and Kristen of Guide to the Unknown, two of my, the people that kind of came up in this world with me in the crime, weird, odd space. And you'll know Will as our voice actor, beloved. And I'm just so happy to have you both here.
Thank you so much. We're very, very happy to be here.
Yes, we love the show. We love you. We love Beyond Belief. So what a match made in heaven.
I've never considered the terminology of we came up together.
Yeah.
You hear that about famous people. But you're right. We did sort of come up together at the same time.
Yes, that's totally true.
We did.
Whoa.
I know. It's very interesting. I mean, your show's been on 7 years. Didn't you just have your 7th birthday?
That's right.
Yeah. And ours has been on for 6. We just had our 6th birthday. So, yeah, your older sibling. I like to call you the Wonder Twins.
Sure. Yeah, everyone does.
Wonder siblings. I like to call you the Wonder siblings. So today we are talking about one of the great influences, I would say, of American Hysteria, potentially Guide to the Unknown, the 90s, early 2000s show Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where I'm going to admit, I think listen, it's been a long time since we did a show, the three of us just kind of hanging out. And then we were talking about Pretty Little Liars.
Oh, yeah.
On which I was somewhat of the outlier.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's happened again. I only started watching this show because of Guide to the Unknown. I don't know it as well as the two of you.
Well, I think that it goes in steps then, because I only started watching it maybe like 10 years ago. My husband Ryan introduced it to me, so I didn't see it as it aired.
Okay.
Did you watch it like when it was coming out, Chelsey?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have just such a like vivid tactile memory of sitting at my granny's house way too close to the TV, like in the carpet, feeling the carpet and just like staring up at this TV. And I mean, it came out in 97, so I'm probably like 9. It's like 9, 10 was when I was really like metabolizing the content.
I'm really picturing like Poltergeist, sitting in front of the TV.
Oh, yeah.
He's here, about Jonathan Frakes.
Except I was so happy about it.
Oh, yeah.
He's here. So let's get into just talking about the show. I have a very interesting journey to take you on because, as you were mentioning in your recent Patreon show where you were watching Beyond Belief, pausing and talking, which is a fantastic format, you were kind of bringing up the who is writing these facts, right? Who is responsible for these facts? And I have the answer to you for at least, a majority of these quote unquote facts. So we'll put a pin in that. We're going to return to this saga of a man who wrote these facts. So, I mean, maybe we should start explaining what this show was for people who are unfamiliar and maybe people who have some creepy, distant memory that we're going to pull out of their psyche.
Yeah, totally. Because it's not a contemporary show. It would completely be understandable for anybody who's never even heard of this and has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So it was a show, like you said, that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, where Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek, was it The Next Generation?
Yes.
And what was his character's name?
Riker.
Okay.
It's unacceptable that I have these answers, but I do know.
Thank you for this dork report.
He's got a strong stage presence, a winning personality, little apple cheeks, kind of a wry smile. He is there as our host and presenter for these reenactment stories that they are giving to us with the knowledge going in that some of these are going to be fake and some of these are going to be real. And as we're watching, he will kind of come in the middle and be like, so do you think this one was real or not? But saying it in a much more artful and ridiculous way.
Overly verbose.
Yeah.
Yeah, very poetic.
Yeah, and they're usually somewhere in the realm of creepy stuff. So there'll be things that are urban legend based or haunting based.
Nightmares come true.
Yeah, murders, mysteries, things like this.
Or miracles too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it God? Was it the devil?
Kind of unsolved mystery adjacent.
Definitely, I would have to imagine this is an Unsolved Mysteries competitor. Somebody realized that Unsolved Mysteries was, making a boatload of money or something, and said, well, we could essentially do that. But rather than have to find all of these true stories, what if we make up half of them and turn it into a sort of television game? And only at the end will we reveal whether or not each story was true, which is very fun.
It's super fun. Oh, and also it's all happening in, I don't know, his house, a dark wooded mansion.
Like a Victorian.
Yeah. Every once in a while he turns a corner and it's a set based on the story. So if it's a story that has to have something to do with a diner, there's all of a sudden a booth in his house with ketchup and mustard while he tells a pithy little anecdote leading into the segment. It's great.
Oh, it's great.
And you'll know, if you don't know, you might know from the memes that have been going around the last couple years that are just super cuts of Frakes openings or closings. And we are definitely going to play that during this episode so people will have a memory jog, because they are just incredible, both in description of what's to come, full of puns, and just, like you said, poetic language. And then
poetic non sequitur madness.
Yes. And then at the end we have the go through each story. I think there's usually about 5, and maybe they're 5 to 8 minutes each. They're very short stories, and then you get him at the end saying you think this was real? you're wrong. It's fiction, you know, in many different ways, but always with that kind of, like you said, a wry smile, like, we gotcha.
He looks like how they say Santa looks before he goes up that chimney. He's just kind of like, whoa, our guy, and then he's out of there.
Touches the side of his nose. Yeah. And they also don't give you any context. He just straight up says, like, nope. Not this time, or whatever.
Or
for
bizarrely,
being real
he'll
or
be
not.
like, so did an angel sneak down into your house in the middle of the night? That one's true.
Yeah.
And they won't explain.
Doesn't elaborate. So you're like, wait, it was?
That was true?
They just move on to the next story.
How could it be?
And that's part of its appeal. It's so good. This has become, in the last few years, my New Year's Eve ritual. I get dumplings from H Mart and watch a bunch of Beyond Belief Factor fiction. That's the way I want to roll into the new year.
That's incredible. I used to do that with Twilight Zone because they'd play Twilight Zone marathons, except this was like day after New Year's, like hungover.
Yeah.
In the living room, and it was just Twilight Zone. And I think Beyond Belief might have actually been even more palatable because it's a little less nauseating,
existential.
For some reason.
Like,
maybe
am I okay?
So that, you guys mentioning the fact that there is no kind of citation at the end when something is declared fact, because a lot of times it's declared fact and you're like, no, that's not fact. That cannot be fact, because there are paranormal instances, right, where it might be fact in that somebody told this story or had this experience, but would you say, like, watching a ghost show where people are retelling their ghost experiences, which of course is one of the best genres on television,
obviously,
would you say it's fact? Probably not. You'd say, okay, you had an experience, and we can't really say definitively that it is a fact because that word has a specific meaning, and it is not I saw a ghost. Yeah.
Right. It's weightier than that.
It is.
I disagree, but I'll accept the premise.
What do you disagree with, Will?
I mean, is anything really true anymore?
That's a good point.
If Jonathan Frakes believes in it, I'll believe anything he says.
That is fine. Well, perhaps you would like to learn where these facts came from.
Of course I would.
I really would. I you know what? When I was like just getting ready for doing this today, I barely came across something that I think you're going to talk about, and I X'd it out really quickly because I wanted to hear it from you instead.
Good. Well, before we get into that, I thought I would like to just talk about like a couple episodes maybe that we remember or enjoyed.
Sure.
And I think the first one that's really interesting that gives like a bit of context into this idea of fact in the way that Beyond Belief employs it is The Kid in the Closet. Do you all remember that one? It's kind of like the most memorable in that when people talk about the show, like, you know how in Are You Afraid of the Dark, I feel like the most memorable one was the I'm Cold episode. People remember the I'm cold.
So
The Kid in the Closet is kind of that for Beyond Belief. And so the story with that one was that a kid was really scared that there was a monster in his closet. Pretty classic. The older brother is like, you're stupid. There's no monster in the closet. I'm making fun of you. My friends are making fun of you. And eventually they kind of go into the bedroom and they want to force the little kid into the closet to scare him, kind of Sixth Sense style.
That's exactly what I was picturing. Oh my God.
That's a terrible moment.
It really is.
I hate that.
That's horrifying. That movie is so scary.
Yeah.
Like soul destroying scary.
It's also very sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
He's sad like all the time in that movie.
It's because he's dead. Sorry, spoiler.
What?
Kristen didn't know.
Shit.
She's never finished the movie.
No, it was too sad. I had to turn it off.
Well, don't keep going. It doesn't get happier. So, instead of them pushing the little kid in the closet and closing the door, luckily, the older brother gets dared by the little brother. Like, okay, if you're so tough, you go in the closet. Then he goes in the closet. He's yelling. The door is closed. The mom comes in, like, what are you doing? Opens the door, and the kid is gone. And in the Beyond Belief episode, it is fact, and they say he was never seen again. Okay.
The show kicks ass.
I know.
That's so awesome that Jonathan Frakes was like,
it is.
That one was true. And then it just goes like, whoosh, and brings you to something else. You're like,
moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like with a little smile too. It was like, that one was true.
That's like almost irresponsible. Any kid who's watching is like, what? Look, it happened to me.
But what really happened was that the kid was found 2 weeks later because he had knew there was a panel in the closet, climbed out and went and hung out at his friend's house and ran away from home for 2 weeks and then was found. And that was, the actual true story. And they just either didn't follow up. But it's like, are we to believe that they, in a 2-week span, did this story?
Right.
No, there's no way. They knew, but they just, so it's like, I think a lot of these true stories are based in some grain of truth, but with even the shortest amount of investigation, they really fall apart. And they make it really hard for you to investigate anything because in the 90s and early 2000s, you just couldn't do it. You just couldn't investigate anything.
Right. So I feel like, for a number of reasons, that's why a show like this couldn't work now, because the second you looked into it, it would completely fall apart. Part of the appeal of it is that there would be some sort of batshit segment like that they go, that one is true. And you go, excuse me? And then you just have to move on from it and you're just internally sort of reeling. You wouldn't be able to have that feeling today because you would look it up and there'd be somebody who had already found out on Reddit the whole deal. Yeah. And actually, that still sounds kind of fun.
No, I totally think that it still sounds fun. I also think that in the 90s, this was made in a period of time where they weren't planning on releasing a season of the show on VHS. Right. They were just put these on TV. Get the advertising bucks or whatever. Mm-hmm. No one will ever see it again.
No one will ever know.
We never have to answer for a thing.
Yeah.
But now that everything is being stored online meticulously and you can, research things, they have to hold up to scrutiny.
But do they even? You know what I mean?
I know. Well, I do still think, I wish this show was still around. Apparently it does have some sort of a contemporary version in Germany or something.
Oh, I did hear that. Yeah, I did hear that. I didn't check it out though.
No, neither should I. My German is a little rough right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I do think that you could at least say we're going to tell you stories and they're either based on a true story.
Yes.
Or they're fake. Mm-hmm. And that way you could still skirt this is a fantastical event that we just depicted, but it's based on a true story. Follow the footnotes to go research on our website.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what that would have saved is baby reindeer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, So one of the episodes you mentioned that is a favorite of mine, or rather segment that you mentioned, is the one with the doll and the confession from the doll. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to remember. I remember it in bits and pieces, but I mean, do you think you probably remember it better than I do?
I think I remember it better, but you can probably help me out. So it was did the woman work for these people?
Yes.
Okay. So it was this older couple and they had a maid who worked with them. And the older couple had a shit ton of dolls. It was a woman who's obsessed with dolls and has them lining the living room and the bedroom and everything. And then one night the couple is killed. The older couple is murdered and the police come to investigate. And the person who's there alive to give any account of the previous day is that maid. And she's telling them that she's innocent. She doesn't know what happened, yada, yada. But all the dolls are around and stuff. And I don't know, is she holding this doll?
I think in the story, a detective picks up a doll and he's a hilarious, Columbo-esque detective.
Yes.
This guy thought he was going to get a spinoff for his character work.
He was really doing it.
Well, why don't we let little Miss Polly Pocket here tell a story? And he pulls a string and it's the maid did it.
Yeah.
And the maid's instantly you shut your mouth, you told on me, you shitty doll. And she confesses off of this doll supposedly outing her.
Yes.
And so that was true.
Yeah.
Fact. You thought this one was made up? You're wrong. It's fact.
Not a chance.
Right. Yeah. And it happened in New Jersey, I think. But we couldn't find anything about it.
Oh, yeah. We tried to research this one.
Yeah. I couldn't find anything. I did read some Reddit threads about like maybe what actually happened, which did make sense, is like, sure, like this maid may have had this anger toward this couple who probably treated her poorly. In the actual segment on Beyond Belief, she's like beating up the dolls. Like when the couple isn't there, she's like spitting in one of the dolls' faces.
That's right.
And the guy walks in and is like, the patriarch of the house walks in and is like, you're fired. And then she murders them. Yeah. But it's like, maybe the factual part is that this maid was fired. She was a bit unhinged and she did commit this murder. And perhaps she was having some sort of delusion that the doll was saying these things. But it's like,
that's what I imagine.
In the show, we're to believe that the doll really said it because the officer hears it.
Yeah, he responded to it, if I remember right.
I believe so.
Yeah, he like takes the testimony from the doll, you know?
Yeah, it's not depicted just like she only heard it and then he's confused by what she's reacting to.
Not at all.
Like he's heard the whole thing from both of them.
Yeah.
And as kooky as all of that is, like my sort of like counterpoint, I mean, I think we're all on the same page, but like, it's not hard to imagine someone being like, well, this is garbage. Who are you watching this show? Like if they can just like outright say that these outlandish stories were true, like what are you getting out of this at all? I think that that's just a fun story.
Totally.
It's just a great, fun, arch, zany story.
That's a good thing to watch at the end of the day. That is 6 minutes that's good to watch.
It's amusing. And there was another one that stuck out in my memory that I believe is outright, like Jonathan Frakes is like, could that story have been true? Not on your life. There was like one that was definitely, he says, is fake that I really liked and is essentially the same story.
Yeah.
And it's, a guy goes to a bar and at this bar, they have a hand in a jar.
Yeah.
And they've got this fun thing that they do whenever a stranger comes into their bar. The bartender behind the bar is able to basically like, give some sort of a signal to a guy who works from in the back room. Like, I don't know, stomp 2 times on the ground. I've got a newbie in the bar here. And the dude in the back room can pull a lever and this hand in the jar can point a finger at the new guy.
So
it's like
awesome.
creepy.
Yeah.
It's fun, but like you can like imagine some small bar that has rigged up some goofball thing to just like haze a new customer or whatever. But this guy is not having, he's like, don't ever make that thing point at me again, barkeep, or I'll kill you. And there's some lore that like the hand belonged to a woman who was killed in an alley outside and she points a finger at whoever murdered her.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the night, this unhinged new patron is going around, he's, having a couple of drinks, then he's playing pool with somebody and people are chuckling because the hand is still pointing at him from across the room. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, I thought I told you to stop pointing it at me. Yeah. And the bartender goes, all right. Calm down, buddy. Calm down. And he calls out the dude who usually controls the hand and says, hey, give it a rest. This guy's getting really worked up. Stop making the hand point at him. And of course, the kid who works in the back goes, but boss, I ain't been working that mechanism all night. And it turns out that this patron,
he killed the hand.
He killed the hand. What a great way to phrase it.
He killed the hand.
He killed the hand. He was the murderer. And so it was genuinely pointing at him. It's basically the same thing as like the doll, outs you or something like that. Yeah. But this one, they don't pretend is true. And I like it just as much. Like I like it on a storytelling basis.
Mm-hmm. And they were good stories. I mean, and like the reenactments were obviously not the best, but they also were not the worst. Like it was, it was a good, the writing on that show is good. And I think, like, I don't know if this is true about the hand one you just told, but I know some of them are like true in the way that they're from the 19th century. They're like 1800s stories that, you could maybe find in the paper, but you can't always trust the newspapers of the 1800s to be telling like the facts. They're maybe a bit like Beyond Belief, actually.
Oh, yes.
So, I think that they just kind of recycle some old folk tales and urban legends. Like there are definitely urban legends that they use fictionally, like they do the Lights Out, which is one of my very favorite urban legends, the high beams behind Oh, wait, not Lights Out. Sorry. The High Beams one, where we all probably know the trucker seems to be following this woman out of a malicious intent, turning on his high beams. But then it turns out that there was a murderer in the back of the car. And, so they do classic
It's one
ones.
of the best.
Yeah, it's one of the best there ever was. And so they do classic urban legends. Some of them, I think they say are fact. It's not perfect, but it's a show that really stuck with me because even as a kid, I was so into urban legends. This along with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark were probably like the best resources for contemporary folklore for a kid to have who doesn't really know yet. I like urban legends. I don't know what that means, but it's like starting to work its way into my psyche, and
just totally drawn to it 100% of the time.
Yeah, I like whatever this is.
Yes.
And then as you get older, you start to like connect the dots and be like, oh, these things have things in common. Let me get more into that.
Yes. And I also put it in the category of like the late 90s, like slate of shows that were like UFOs caught on tape, police chases caught on tape, ghosts caught on tape. It was like such a fun time in television.
Oh, totally.
It was. There were no facts back then, and it was actually okay. It was like,
we couldn't check them, so what the hell difference does it make?
Yeah, it didn't really matter. Honestly, listen, it's not that much different from today. I still, because of some of the research that we do, and I'm sure that you have the same experience, like I'm on YouTube a lot. It's what I watch more than anything. And the amount of channels where it's like 18 creepy things that happened this week.
Yes.
You won't believe number 8.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like real ghosts caught on film. And it's like, this is no different from that very programming that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's all just like, it's not on TV because I don't watch TV, but it's still out there. People are still making it because it's still fun.
Yeah, it is.
And it's no more dependable than it ever was.
Nope.
It's more just like, to me, it's like the beat goes on. It's always been around.
That is totally true.
I mean, we are just so lucky to have been raised amongst caught on tape videos.
Amongst frakes.
Amongst frakes. Okay. Are we ready for me to deliver my incredible journey of a man's life who was our factual resource for Beyond Belief?
Oh my God.
Yes.
More after this. And now back to the show. So a lot of times when Jonathan Frakes would be like, this one is fact, he would say like, based on research by Robert Trelins, this happened 20 years ago on the East Coast. And that was like the most you'd get. It was like a little tiny piece of information that you could do nothing with to actually check anything related to the story. But even as a kid, I was like, Robert Trelins, like, who is this guy? We never see him. We never hear from him. We only hear from Jonathan Frakes, and we hear from, did you all know that the disembodied voice is Don LaFontaine, the In a World guy?
No.
Oh,
isn't that nice?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's fun.
I know. A fun little fact. And then the host of the first season is James Brolin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
it's weird.
Was not the right choice, but
it's inferior.
They fixed it.
It is. It just wasn't that he didn't hit the right tone. You know,
No.
he didn't.
No, it has to be a little silly, a little bit like gotcha.
A little
You know
wry.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's like, again, like Unsolved Mysteries. Like, it wasn't always Robert Stack.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Right.
beyond Robert Stack, they tried out some other people like
Farina.
Dennis Farina. They had that didn't work at all.
No.
Well, it has its own charm.
Does it?
Hey,
Kind of.
All
It's
right.
not nearly as good, but I kind of like the Farina years.
takes all kinds.
He's in that like weird like command center that's like all green because CSI had come out. So
Yeah,
now we're like
right.
making it look like CSI. I kind of like that.
Yeah, he's got a cyber
man.
squad.
Okay, so Robert Trelins is a very prolific author who was working most like prolifically in the 1960s. And he wrote at least 251 books. Okay.
Oh boy.
But are they good?
Yeah. Whenever I hear that somebody's written like,
Touting the number.
oh yeah. I'm always like, okay, but that's not helping me think that you're good. I have to tell you.
It's not.
I've written over 251 books, 3 of them today.
Okay. It's like, is there something going on in your personal life where you need to
like,
continuously
what's up?
write books? So
That's so many books.
it's so many books. And he also wrote under like a whole bunch of pseudonyms. So it's like you have to kind of figure out who is Robert Trelans and who is not. But luckily people have done that for me.
I've heard that most authors are Robert Trelans.
Most books are Robert Trelans.
Yeah.
Yes.
90% of the books out there.
I think he wrote The Handmaid's Tale.
I know. I think he's Dan Brown.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
He's behind you right now.
No, he sadly did pass away in about 2011.
Much love and respect to him.
R.I.P. to this man who, let's say, truly lived. So some of those books were occult stories, but even more so, he wrote very controversial smut novels.
Okay, Robert Trelans.
Yes.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. So
Happy Trelans.
the titles of his occult books were things like Weird People of the Unknown, Supernatural Warnings, Supernatural Strangers, Clairvoyant Strangers, The Hidden Spectre, Visions Beyond Legend, Mirage, or Are They With Us? Really weird title. Life After Death, Clairvoyance in Women, and Children of the Supernatural.
Huh.
Do you know any of the smut titles? Or
Yes.
were those the smut titles?
Are you ready? No, those were the occult titles, the smut titles, mostly written in the 60s and early 70s when like sleaze adult novels, which now are kind of like in the kitsch category, you know, like picture the covers of the books being like an undressed woman, like, you know, like laying out and, you know, I think you can picture it. That wasn't a very good description, but some people call it like hip pocket sleaze. So it's like books you could just like put in your pocket in the 60s and read. And some of them were Win with Sin, Operation Boudoir, Invasion of the Nymphomaniacs, The Sex Persuaders, Jazzman in Nude Town. My favorite.
This is awesome.
I know. The Nymph Island Affair, Confessions of an Exhibitionist, and Sex Variations in Voyeurism.
All right, Trelans in Nude Town.
Jazzman in Nude Town.
Yes.
It sounds like an ongoing series.
Yeah, where else does Jazzman go?
Yeah, exactly. Naked Bird.
Let's follow Jazzman to the
Undy
naked
Mountain.
city.
Jazzman's voyage to Undy Mountain.
So he did also write a lot of very early lesbian and gay porn smut, which, well, thanks, Robert. That's okay.
Queer
All right.
pioneer.
Yeah. And as far as I know, he just was married with a wife and I don't know, you know, they could have had an arrangement. What do I know? It was the 60s and 70s, but
who the hell knows?
I mean, and these are just a handful of the 251 books, which also included business books with titles like Dynamic Selling and How to Be a Power Closer in Selling.
Wow.
This man, his mind.
He's all over the place.
And this was our fact checker for Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction.
This is our fact checker, Robert Trelans.
This kind of explains some stuff. This is who would hear the doll story and be like, fact.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He was in the middle of writing 5 books. He was writing something for like an office park. He's writing some porn, something about the Bermuda Triangle. And then he gets a phone call from Jonathan Frakes asking if this story of a girl who had a nightmare is true. And he goes, yes.
Yes, but it explains how bonkers it is. Like, of course, we would hear this and he's just like, that one is true. And you're like, what the fuck? And it's because this guy who's got like 20 balls in the air.
He's writing a book with each hand.
Yeah.
Somebody just holds a
times.
phone to his head.
Right.
At all times. He may have employed people to write for him. We don't know. He just lived on a sailboat, just writing his books.
Yeah.
But more controversially today, he also wrote like smut stories about like revolutionary Black people. So like he wrote Black Stud, Black Pirate, Slave King, Slave's Revenge, and Panther John, because he said that he cared a lot about the struggles of civil rights, but these books have since been criticized for their like hypersexualization, as you probably imagine.
White fellow, was he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Doesn't seem great.
No, it's not great. I'm going to show you what Robert Trayland looks like in the chat, so you can maybe describe just how white he is.
Oh, really?
I can't wait to get eyes on this guy.
Let's see. Eyes on Traylands.
Yeah.
Oh.
Whoa. Yeah. No, this is a white guy. All right.
Oh, that's funny. He looks, I didn't expect him to look one way or another, but he looks exactly how I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, same. I'm like, not surprised. I don't know. He's freckly. He's got, in this picture, he's got gray hair and he's got a gray goatee, and he has, I don't know, it's almost like a sailing hat and a cowboy hat hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like he's got a cowboy hat that's held on with like, twine or something.
It's a cowboy hat made of canvas.
Ironically, he has a bit of Santa to him.
He's got kind of a lot of Santa to him, actually.
He's got rosy cheeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smutty Santa.
He looks like he doesn't have a care in the world.
Ho, ho, ho.
Probably
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he was prolific. I don't think that he had any time to care or think about anything other than his books.
His last words were, "I never cared."
I never cared.
He was chasing every interest.
Yeah. He did support his family only through writing. And so
That's amazing.
I would hope so when he's written 251 books. Like,
yeah. Yep.
That better be paying the bills. What the hell else is going on?
No kidding. So one interesting thing is, since he lived on a sailboat, he ended up kind of hanging out with some random figures who also were out on the open seas, especially science fiction writers.
This is crazy, Chelsey.
I know. So who do you think would be the most interesting science fiction writer for him to meet out on the open sea?
What?
You can do it. Science fiction writer in the 60s.
L. Ron Hubbard?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Whoa.
I have no more detail than the fact that he said that he used to hang out with L. Ron Hubbard. All right. I have no more information. I wish that I did.
My God.
With all parts of my soul do I wish I knew more about this. But yeah, he was out hobnobbing with L. Ron.
I don't trust this guy.
No,
did he ever do any fact checking? You guessed it. It's real.
Xenu did pop out of a volcano.
That's fact.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting part of his life. So in 1963, he ghost wrote this book called Pleasure Was My Business. And it was from the point of view and with the help of this woman who called herself Madame Sherry, who had spent a year in jail for running a bordello, which is also known as a brothel.
Nice.
Yes.
That sounds awesome.
That feels like a good Venn diagram of some of his, because you could then also write business as a pleasure.
Yeah.
And then, sell that
That's true.
You know what I mean? To like high powered business folks.
Yeah. It's his business acumen, like blended with his love of love making.
Yeah.
So it's perfect for him.
Ew.
And some crime is in there too. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So this book kind of revealed some information about politicians and socialites that was, not welcome by them. These revelations within the book included that the king of Egypt had visited the brothel, Al Capone had visited the brothel, among many others, and that they talked about things like voyeurism through one-way mirrors in hotels and socialites who were like having orgies with multiple men. And it was a very controversial book. And There was even like a whole section about this kinky Catholic priest that really pissed off the Catholic Church who took issue with this.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yes. But the Florida Attorney General ended up banning the book, which he called obscene, lewd, degrading, sadistic, masochistic, and disgusting.
Ooh. Sounds like a bestseller.
It's gross.
Yeah. So Robert Trelins ends up suing about because his book is being banned, and he's represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU.
Whoa.
And in 1964, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the ban, and it was also overturned with Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer, which was a huge moment in banned book history. And he is part of that legacy of challenging banned books with the book that he wrote about the keeper of a brothel.
Wow.
Man.
What a wild man.
It's like a Forrest Gump type.
Yeah.
You know, sort of little touch points in American history.
Yeah, that's right. This guy's been out there challenging the status quo in ways we didn't even realize.
Yeah. Yeah. We could call him Forrest Smut.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yes. Thank you. I like that as well. So in 1966, he writes the book Strange Events Beyond Human Understanding, which is the collection that would be the basis for Beyond Belief. So think about that. He writes this in 1966, and basically 30 years later, they're calling him up being like, we want to use these stories that you wrote 30 years ago to inform this. And it's so interesting. Yeah,
that's crazy. So there's nothing else besides that? He didn't write anything more contemporary that... Is his involvement just that they just cite that 1966 book?
Basically. And it's hard to figure these things out. So I'm on Reddit with all the nerds who love Beyond Belief as much as us. And they're doing the detective work of what is this based on? How they figured that out, I'm not sure. But it is, written about in newspaper articles of the time, in the 90s. They're it's based on Robert Trelins' book. So basically, the book itself is something that I was oh my God, I'm going to buy this book.
Totally.
How fantastic. But it does not, you cannot get a copy for under $150, and it can go for up to $5,000. If you go on Amazon, it's $5,000.
Oh my God.
That's crazy.
Those real Trelins heads are driving it up.
I know. They're driving it up. The Trelin heads.
Man. And they cite it a good amount, it seems like.
Yeah.
So this is a sacred text for Beyond Belief. And it came out 30 plus years before the show did.
I know.
That's amazing.
It's sounding increasingly to me. So are we can I confirm that are you saying that Robert Trelins as an individual, he did not in the 90s work on Beyond Belief? It's just those stories that are true often were pulled from his book?
I think that he did work with them maybe to adapt them a bit, but I know that they took his stories and editorialized them a bit, right? So they changed names, they changed places, or they added little details. I don't know how much he was actually involved, but they did another show.
Another Trelins-based show is out there?
Yeah, it was in 1992, and it was called Miracles and Other Wonders.
No, I don't know that.
I feel I remember it deep down, but I would have been so young. But yeah, so it was there was a precedent to use his stories for this type of show, the Wonders, the Unknown Wonders type show.
Yeah.
So this is lower effort than I realized Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction. All this stuff was largely written decades prior and someone just found the book.
They found the great book.
I know.
Yeah.
It's really no different from just plucking an Uncle John's bathroom reader and then creating a show that just called Tales to Amaze and Astound.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah.
I suppose so, but there's also a certain lightning in a bottle quality going on here because you have to get the right writers, the right set designers to make Frakes' insane home. You have to have Frakes himself. So yes, in essence, you do find source material and then you plop a person in front of a camera, but all the elements have to be just so to get something like that.
You're right. And
because something else could have come of this that sucked.
Oh, yeah. I think there are probably a lot of those. It did. Right.
Yeah.
I think we could recast our own modern Beyond Belief. I think you can find these ingredients fine. What I'm trying to say to you is I understand your point about this being a special circumstance that took off, but I don't think the ingredients specifically in Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction are that rare. I think you can find someone with at least the charisma of Jonathan Frakes just fine.
I don't know. He's so weird in this, in like the perfect way. He's so odd.
He is
in a way that
odd.
I think is unique because he's weirdly like, he's not too over the top, but he is very like,
a little holier than smarter than thou.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
but like somewhat playing it like a little straight at the same time. It's such a strange and precise blend that I think would be hard to achieve. It's hard to get that right.
It's hard to get that right.
It is hard to get that right. It really is.
Yeah. So there's that. And then again, seriously, I think that his weird house does a lot of the heavy lifting because he's walking through these rooms in his home, his mansion.
It's like study.
Yeah. That's
so
but it's a
strange.
Set.
It's clearly a set.
Yes, it's obviously a set. But like, what is the premise of this? What is this setup? We're just walking through.
The premise is that mad genius Jonathan Frakes is here to tantalize you with stories that drive you crazy. You have to outsmart him.
It always starts out, if not always, most of the time starts out with some sort of optical illusion where it's like that thing where it's like, is it an old lady or is it a young lady?
Right.
In his like dining room.
Right.
And then he like goes into another room and it's like made to look like a Shake Shack. And like everything is weird. You have to be willing to be so weird to make this happen.
You do. His house is like the haunted mansion waiting area at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we to believe is it his house? Are we to believe that's his home?
Kristen keeps saying that. Now Kristen's trying to make it feel like that's a fact. That we're supposed to believe that Jonathan Frakes lives on that set.
I think that's his house. No, I don't think it. I don't know what the hell it is.
We've got a regular Robert Traylan's over here. Yeah.
Yeah. They just want it to look like, some sort of a smart person's library or something.
Yes.
But then he's got, props out the wazoo.
But he's always there. And then remember that he's always there. Of course he is. Remember that episode where he's like working at a computer and it's like, is that his computer? Is this his desk? Because there were like Post-its on it and like crumpled tissues.
Yeah, there was like oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, they show his desk and there are crumpled up tissues.
So that suggests this is his house.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It does.
Oh my God, I figured it out.
What?
That was Robert Traylan's computer.
Whoa! Oh, wow! Just
he works on the show.
Frozen in time. Wow! You did. You figured it out. It's Traylan's house. It seems like it would be Traylan's house compared to Frakes' home.
It feels like it's Traylan's world and we're all just living in it. He's written books on everything. All of recorded human history goes through his lens. He decides what's real or not.
Yeah, I guess whenever he's landlocked, he lives in the Beyond Belief house.
Yeah, that must be
when he's not on the seas.
More after this. And now back to the show. So I have like one more bit of Traylan lore for you. So, these books that he wrote were like quote unquote nonfiction. They were categorized as nonfiction, not the smut, but the paranormal true story stuff that he did. Or as he used the word occult when he talked about his books.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the reason that he got interested in all of these types of stories, the reason that we really have Beyond Belief as we know it, because without Traylan's, what is Beyond Belief?
That's the question.
Is because his great uncle disappeared on the USS Cyclops, allegedly in the Bermuda Triangle.
Whoa.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Or so he says.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot fact check. I cannot say that's fiction. Or, we got you.
What an
that
interesting
one's fact.
point.
That's a great point, Chelsey. That's a great point. And I don't believe it.
No. But it
I
could
don't
be
think
true.
that he-
I
Did we
don't know.
name a ship the Cyclops?
They did. They named it
That's
the
real?
SS Cyclops. Yes, it was a World War I ship that they never ever found a trace of. It disappeared in 1918, and it was going between the West Indies and Baltimore. And it actually is a mystery that has no answer. There's lots of half answers or guesses. Was it sunk by the Germans, et cetera, et cetera? But most of those have kind of been, people have moved away from those explanations. And so what is left but the Bermuda Triangle?
The Bermuda Triangle.
Of course. And it sounds like a lie that somebody would tell, that they're like, my uncle was on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can't prove me wrong because no one ever found it.
Mm-hmm.
It does. But I mean, I looked as hard as I could to see if there was a Traylands.
And you're literally a professional researcher. So
Yeah.
if you couldn't find it, I'm sorry. I do not believe that man was on that ship.
But we don't know what Traylands' great uncle, what was it? Did I say?
His grunkle.
His grunkle.
It was his grunkle. His grunkle stand.
We don't know if his grunkle had the same last name, right?
True.
Could have been a
That's a
maternal
great point.
grunkle.
Yeah. Good point.
Great point.
Interesting. Yeah, who can believe anything that he says? That's the
I know.
irony of being somebody
Right.
who is like a truth seller,
Yeah.
right? I determine what's real or not. Is that anything you say to me, I'm going to just be like, I don't know if I can believe a word coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
What a fascinating dinner guest.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love it.
Did I have quiche for breakfast or not? That one?
Yeah.
Not true. Not on your
true.
life. Not a chance.
Not on your life is a good one. He
Not on
definitely
your
says
life.
that. Not on your life.
It's about arbitrary facts.
Yeah, you're like, okay. It's a little intense, but sure.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it. Not this time. No, not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up.
So, I mean, there are some more parts of Traylan's life I won't get super into. He did try to sue because he felt like he, living in the South, didn't get the same football games that the people who lived in the north of the states were getting, and it made him really angry. So there was a pretty
Didn't
boring
get the same
lawsuit.
football? What, like on TV?
Yeah, like on TV.
What?
It wasn't.
Why is this recorded history?
But we can't find out whether his grunkle was on the USS Napoleon or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was all about, he was just upset about college football. And
What a guy.
that was another part of his story in his life. And he also tried to start this magazine called the National Crime Reporter because he says that his uncle was shot and killed in a corner store in Baltimore, and that his wife's cousin was murdered for $150. And a friend of his was shot on the street in New York by two men who just walked up to his car. So a lot of very sensational stories here. We don't know. We weren't there.
That's true. We don't.
We don't know.
Those all sound like stories for, like that scene in The Village where they're like, why did we move out of the big cities and form this commune? Well, my uncle was shot.
Maybe that's why he lives on a boat. Because
Maybe. He's like, I have to take to international waters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody can get me 300 feet out.
It's just a shame the TV service is terrible out here.
Yes. I can't. That's what really was the problem, is he just didn't get good football service out on the water.
Let him watch the game.
Yeah, in those southern waters.
He's written half of all books ever written. Let him watch some football.
He deserves to rest. Guy's tired.
But this thing he wanted to start, and I believe he did, I couldn't find any copies of it or any proof that this really went anywhere. But yeah, he called it the National Crime Reporter, and it was going to be a trade journal for bounty hunters, a guide for people who don't mind earning money by wreaking vengeance.
Whoa.
This is
Vigilante
not what I thought it was going to be
No.
at all.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. He was basically collecting all the wanted advertisements all over the nation and printing them in one place so that people could, find opportunities to be a bounty hunter,
bounties?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Track down wanted people.
Yeah.
How close to possible is that today? Are there still people out there that are bounty hunting?
I think so.
Where are bounties reported?
Think about Dog.
I think about him often.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Dog.
He was out there.
And another part I love in this article, he says, quote, "But now I have the cooperation of the FBI and the Canadian Royal Mounted Police." And they said that then the newspaper goes on to say, "Nobody in the RCMP last week could or would confirm cooperation with the National Crime Reporter. And one spokesman scoffed at the concept, quote, "It sounds like a get-rich-quick scheme from me, printing material he can get for free and charging something exorbitant for it."
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
So not my favorite part of his history.
Yeah.
What a storied life.
Yeah.
Seriously. It seems like this guy never sat idle.
I don't
You know
think
what I mean?
he did.
I guess watching those college football games, like the only time this guy sat still. And he couldn't watch them. So actually, he never
even
sat
watch
still.
him. That's why he was like, I'm so pissed, I'm going to write another book.
He was moving and shaking like nobody's business.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to sue. It's like
so I'll
the
sue.
energy it takes to sue.
Seriously.
Just quick basic math. 251 books is easily more than 2 a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
He literally needed to write like 4 books a year, right?
And I mean, he wasn't writing, like, I can't really tell, but it seems like the majority of these books were written like in the 60s.
Oh, specifically the 60s.
It seems like it.
He wrote 251 books in the 60s.
I don't know that. I can't even confirm the 251 books necessarily,
Sure.
because
Right,
how do you
right.
do that when a man has so many pseudonyms?
Of course.
Man, thank God this guy did not get to the internet age, because he might have been eviscerated.
man. Prolific
Right?
YouTuber. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see
Oh,
it.
yeah. You're so right.
I see
This
it.
guy would have been all over YouTube.
Yeah.
We've looked into your entire life story, and that one's not real.
But I mean, whatever the truth is with his life, he really lived, as we like to say here. He's a man who really lived. I don't agree with everything he did, but he lived a life, and he lived it large.
He sure did.
Tall tales.
Yes. And he brought us some joy, that's for sure. Maybe not he brought us some joy, but his source material was used to bring us a little bit of joy.
Indirectly, he did.
Indirectly, yes.
He
yes.
fueled the Frakes machine that has brought us much joy.
He did. I had no idea that he was like the Wizard of Oz behind Jonathan Frakes. He's just the face.
Yeah,
I know.
that's right.
You know?
I know.
Trellins was pulling the strings.
So yeah, that is the basic biography of Robert Trellins, and I'm happy I finally know. I've been wondering about it since childhood, and now we know that he was the Forrest Smut of America.
Yeah, evidently. It was like a Johnny Appleseed of nonsense.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace, Robert Trellins.
R.I.P.
Yeah, rest in power, my dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsey.
I know you probably didn't expect any of that.
No, I would have assumed. What would I have assumed? I think I just would have assumed like some committee or like some people that are just like lucky to have the job writing, and they're like, I gotta come up with a few things. Let me just pick up a couple of library books and find some weird stories.
You know, I came across the name Robert Trellins and that he was behind this stuff or whatever. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think I've seen that name in the credits or heard the name or something. And I just like shut it right down. That's what I was talking about earlier. And I thought he may have been like a researcher for the show or something, or a fact checker. I was not expecting this at all. What a treat.
Well, and the funny thing, too, is like, that man would never have been hired now with that background. Like, again, it's like this lack of the internet just made it so that we just had no idea what was going on at all. And we just couldn't Google his name and see that he wrote like what was it? Jazzman in Nude Town.
Jazz in Nude Town. Jazzman in Nude Town has to be either the best or worst title of any story in the history of the world.
It could be both.
Town. That's how you know that he was writing like 5 books a week.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
you get to Nude Town and you don't take a second stab at the title.
Nope.
You're just like, Nude Town, good enough, moving on.
Perfect.
I wrote the cover and now I'm just going to continue through and finish the book.
And also, I don't know what the publishing process was like back then. With the ability to self-publish now, this guy probably would have written like 500 books.
Yeah. Think of all
Because
the
he could just
rejected
pump
books.
them out.
Yeah. There's probably
That's a
so
great
many.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
Because he was stymied by the publishing process in some way with his ability to get them out to the public.
So then here's a question. How many Robert Traylons are all around us without us realizing it?
Mm.
How
Oh,
many
I
of
know.
them are self-publishing these things all the time? You know, one a day on Kindle or whatever.
I think a lot.
Right?
Mhm.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
so many. We could have
Yes.
so many beyond beliefs,
Yeah.
and they could all
Wow.
be
It's beyond
bullshit. And yeah, I mean, it was always like you'd hear Frakes say like based on firsthand research by Robert Traylons. So it was
Yeah.
like what I don't know, because I couldn't get my mitts on the book or a PDF of the book or a library copy of the book.
Right.
You know, I don't know the process he went through. I don't know, was he going to people's houses? How was he finding these stories? These are all questions that I also have. Was he just like going up and down the East Coast on his boat, like sniffing out tales? I don't know.
Right.
I really don't know. Because that's another big question is like, how do you do firsthand research on the paranormal in the 60s?
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I don't know. It's an unsolved mystery.
It's an unsolved mystery. Wrong show, Kristen.
Yeah, you blew it. You screwed up.
Shut up, guys.
So I think that in terms of how this kind of relates to American Hysteria now and what you all do too, I think on Guide to the Unknown is like this space between truth and fiction, between fact and fiction, where like the best stories do lie. And I think that that was inspiring to me years later, not only because, I want to get to the facts, but also because at the end of the day, I know that you can't really get to the facts when it comes to history.
Yeah.
Like history is a story that we tell. And I feel comfortable with that. And I feel like that's why we don't call American Hysteria a show that is like about debunking, because you can debunk something, certainly, but when it comes right down to like telling a story from the 18 and 1900s, early 1900s, you're dealing with multiple kinds of materials, some of which are as factual as you can get, written by academics, but then the sources for that information could be dubious as well. Like these newspaper articles sensationalized in the 1800s, you know, not only provide sometimes academics with their information, but shows like Beyond Belief as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like being comfortable living between those two things, I think, is something that show helped me with at a very young age and in a very fun way. So I think that's the value, man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, one of my favorite things that we do on Guide to the Unknown is we've now made a habit for the last year or so out of trying to cover bit by bit every single urban legend that exists.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
It's, you know, there is no unraveling them to the point where you figure out the origin. Although sometimes you will find out that like some modern ones come from directly like a few years ago or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
But like from a story perspective, I'm always fascinated to see like what's the version of a story that really took hold.
Yes.
Like everybody knows what the boogeyman is, but there are a million different concepts of what the boogeyman is. And it's like a very personal thing to be like, what is the best version of an urban legend to you?
Yeah, like your definitive boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly. They're all sort of like shapeless. And so anybody who purports to be like, I've got a list of all of the definite true stories is like, I'm never going to believe that, but I'm always going to enjoy the best telling of a dubious story.
Yeah, totally.
And that to me, more than anything else, is like the joy of doing this research, is because you're just exposing yourself to like fun, lesser known, weird stories.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
That's it. And it's a joyful thing, you know.
Yes.
We don't have to look at it and say like, harumph, like, you know, those weren't true stories. You know, it wasn't ever about that. It was about like opening people to the unknown. And
it's like just enjoying it, having fun.
Just have some fun.
Yeah, it's delightful.
It's absolutely delightful.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It is. So go out there, people. I believe that Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction is on
YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
A lot of it is on YouTube.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube. I think it's on others. You know what? You're all adults. You can go and find it.
Yeah.
But if you've never watched it, give it a shot and see if you can guess which ones are fact and which ones are fiction.
Ooh, yeah.
And thank you both so much for coming on the show. This was such a blast, and I couldn't have chosen two better people to talk about Beyond Belief with. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsey. Thank you for all that research.
Seriously, thank you so much.
Fascinating.
It was so much fun to get to talk in general and about this and to learn about that. What the hell? So
Rubber
thank
triplets.
you. Yes.
Wow.
What a guy.
Here to enrich the text.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a rich text.
This was American Hysteria. Make sure you subscribe to Guide to the Unknown wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. We still have tickets to our live shows with You're Wrong About and The Little Lies, our producer Miranda's Fleetwood Mac tribute band. I don't really know how to describe this live show experience. It's half history and half full-blown theater. So you're really going to want to get your tickets to A Massive Seance, January 11th in San Francisco and January 24th in LA. Hope to see you there. If you want to support American Hysteria and make sure that we can continue making the show, you can head to patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. You'll get ad-free episodes and bonus content like Hysteria Home Companion, the other podcast I do with our producer Miranda, where we tell you stories related to the topics we cover and stories we think you'll definitely be interested in. That's patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. American Hysteria's producer and editor is Miranda Zickler. Our associate producer is Riley Swedelius Smith, and I'm your host, Chelsey Weber Smith. Thanks, as always, for listening, and I hope you have a week that is beyond belief, or maybe just one normal.